In our first reading this Sunday from the prophet Jeremiah, God promises a new relationship between him and his people. And I think for us who have been born into Christianity, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand the full difference of, what does it really mean, that something new is taking place. I think there's a lot of ways to talk about it, but one of the simple ones, I think, is really just recognizing where the relationship takes place between God and his people. Is it outside of them or is it inside of them? And that's the big thing with the Old Testament, the Old Covenant. That relationship is still between God and his people. It's a real relationship, right? But the law is imposed from the outside in. God gives the commandments to Moses. They're written on the tablet, and they're, in a sense, imposed, right? And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I just mean it's from the outside in. I mean, put upon, right? Put upon. Well, God promises through Jeremiah, that he will write the law on their hearts, right? And with the coming of Jesus, being baptized into him and God dwelling within us, it's not an imposition from the outside in, but it's a renewal from the inside out. The old law didn't have the capability of changing hearts, right? Really causing, deep conversion. Sure, we need that structure in our lives. Certainly it helped people, certainly it pointed them in the direction of God. But to really change their hearts and renew them from the inside out, the law was just incapable of doing that. There were sacrifices that were offered essentially for the forgiveness of sins, right? That brought people, in a sense, back into relationship with God. But again, those sacrifices were external, right? They were something other, something out there. In the Old Covenant, many sacrifices were offered over and over again. The priest would offer these sacrifices for the forgiveness of sins. But as God wants to renew us and renew the world from the inside out, entering into it and entering into our hearts, Jesus becomes the source of that renewal on the inside of us. And no longer will there be a priest who offers, multiplied sacrifices, another lamb and another lamb and another lamb and another lamb. And that's actually what we hear in our second reading from the letter to the Hebrews, that we miss we don't pick up on the language, but we hear that line that when he was made perfect, right? That line itself is really a line from the description of the Old Testament priestly ordinations, right? When he was made perfect. It isn't that Jesus was lacking something before he was made perfect, but that description is really saying that as Jesus mounts the wood of the cross, he's offering himself in sacrifice. He's being ordained to offer his once and for all sacrifice for all eternity in heaven, and becoming that source of the reconciliation and renewal of heart and relationship with God that we enjoy the fruits of in our Christianity. But as the source and the model, so think about this. As a priest, I offer Mass all the time, right? Every day if possible. But, it's not a new sacrifice, right? It's a new celebration, but it's the same sacrifice of Jesus offering himself on the cross. But all of this, too, is directed towards our celebration of Easter, where Jesus becomes our Passover lamb and offered himself in the beginning, if you will, on the cross, and becomes the priest and the lamb of sacrifice that would ultimately become the source of our reconciliation with God, the source of the renewal of our hearts, the source of our living our lives in self-sacrificial love for other people. So, as we're making this turn towards our celebration of Easter, I think it's helpful to recognize that. At this point, the fifth week of Lent, hopefully we're not just, overburdened by our Lenten practices, but, where we've allowed the Lord to renew us from the inside out. And notice that difference, right? Sometimes we take on external Lenten penances which, are fine. They're good, but ultimately they need to be directed towards making ourselves more available for God's grace, the grace of Jesus Christ to renew us from the inside out. Your Lenten practices themselves, don't have the power to make you holy. Only Jesus does. So at this point, is your heart being renewed? Are you being transformed from the inside out? Or are you becoming a bit curmudgeon-y towards the end of this Lent? Whatever your practices are, whatever you're doing, really make an emphasis in these last couple of weeks to allow the Lord's grace to enter in, to recognize that He is the source of all the love and the renewal in you that you desire. Allow Him to refresh you, strengthen you, nourish you, and most especially as we look forward to our celebration of Easter, to renew you from the inside out.